Following a public appeal back in 2016, the current government purchased the land of Smith Barcadere to prevent future private development on it. What do you think should be done with this site? And if elected, what other sites in your constituency or the islands as a whole would you be looking to secure for protection and improvement?
I think in terms of what happened with Smith Barcadere, it was a learning experience for all of us. And I think that it's a historical site, obviously very close to everyone's heart. And so at the point then when decisions were made and the public was not aware of certain things, there was an outcry, and so it was, it was saved or salvaged. I think that in that instance, it's a learning for us, and I think that we need to then maybe canvass, just not only in this constituency, but just overall, different historical sites that we hold dear to our hearts, that are a part of our culture, that we could possibly find ourselves in the same position. So I think with doing that also, we need to include the constituents, to do a collaboration per se. And I think that that's sometimes what's been a failure with the governments, is that we're not aware of what belongs to who, what's not crown. We assume that it's our property, but it's not. And so we run into this problem. And I think that the lack of information is a huge problem. And so I definitely would want more transparency. Decisions, at least inform us so we know, and that's the type of representative that I want to be. I want to be a transparent representative, but I also want to collaborate with my constituents so that they know whatever decisions are being made, they're aware of it, and it's not that we're assuming that anybody knows anything. So I think we should just canvass and find the different sites that we feel this way about, and we make that decision.
Cruise ships play a major role in our tourism industry, and cruise berthing has been a topic of discussion for many years. What is your position on the development of the piers?
I think this is just another example of where the general public does not have enough information and decisions are being made, and so it will be after the fact that the general public will then be involved. And I think $300 million is a whole lot of money for the general public to not be involved with. I think that the cruise ship does bring a significant amount of business to our shores, but we have to also see what type of business is it. And would it be better for us to spend money on our stayover tourism, for instance? I know that tourism is not even the largest business that we have. The financial services is, and so I think that anything sounds good, depending on how someone says it. But I think we definitely have to do some due diligence to ensure that it's the right decision. We are 22 miles, and I don't think that we have to act like the big guys, because we are not a big guy per se in some areas. So for me, that's how I feel about the port. I think that I'd like definitely some more information. I think that we're entitled to more information. We'd like to see the adverse effects, and we'd also, need to take into consideration all different angles. So in terms of the port, for what I'm seeing, even though the government might not have to spend money up front, they will have to pay down the road, and it will be the liability, as Mr. Earlston rightly said, of the government in many areas. So I think that we could look at the money being spent and see how that's going to benefit us as a country overall, and before we make a decision such as having a port.
Ms. Tyson, given that South Sound suffers from traffic congestion and is a popular route for cyclists and joggers, what plans would you promote to improve road safety and reduce traffic?
I definitely believe in terms of road safety, sidewalks is something that it's a necessity, so that we keep people from off the roads. I think that that's proving difficult because of the laws many years ago, and fences can go out to the road's edge and all of that. So it's going to take some time and work. So I think that's one of the things. I think in terms of traffic, if we're not going to put limits per se on how many vehicles are per family or whatever, then we might have to start thinking about rerouting our traffic per se. I think that maybe the eastern districts or Bodentown, that side, there are opportunities there for maybe government to have business, carry on business in the eastern districts, as opposed to everything being in Georgetown and everybody coming to Georgetown in the morning and trying to get home in the evening. So if, for instance, the Lands and Survey Department, just for an example, is located in Lower Valley, then we don't have to consider that traffic having to come down to town in the morning. I also think that, looking at maybe staggered times that people are able to come to work, they might be able to choose, 7 to 3 as opposed to everybody having to be at work at 8:30, 9 o'clock. So there are some considerations that I've thought about that I think might actually ease up traffic if we're not, if everybody's going to just be allowed to have as many cars and everybody's headed to town in the morning and headed back home in the evening. There's not too much road that we can create on 22 miles. So I think that we're going to have to be creative to figure out how to keep safe and how to deal with our traffic.
If not elected, how would you continue to establish yourself as a community leader?
If I'm not elected, how would I continue to establish myself as a community leader?
Yeah, that's the question.
I'd just do what I've been doing for 20 years. I would continue working with young people and families and my elderly. I just continue doing what I've always been doing. I'd continue working on that family unit, trying to connect community, family, and school, and just work towards the success of our young people and our future leaders of tomorrow. So I wouldn't do anything different than I have been doing. In fact, the reason that I decided to put myself up for election is because I thought that, what I've been doing on the scale that I can do it has been limited. And so with more resources, I imagine, being able to do more and being able to bring on board like-minded people, that are talented and qualified, and they have the heart for the Cayman Islands, and that we could work in tandem together in order for us to really, really make a difference. Because I see our senior citizens that need to be weaved into the fabric of our lives that we're doing a poor job with. I see young people, as I mentioned before, literacy is such a huge issue for me. So I wouldn't do anything different. I just continue doing exactly what I've been doing and working along with whoever is elected, because at the end of the day, we all have to work together.
Given the increase in sexual abuse against our children, do you support harsher sentencing guidelines? And do you support the establishment of a sexual offenders register?
Okay, so the social worker will answer the question. I do believe absolutely that harsher sentences should be implemented, of course, because it's an insult. I think when you see that someone can get a harsher sentence for a traffic offense and, sexually abusing a child, for instance, is a slap on the wrist. I think that's absolutely a downfall. We cannot tolerate that. But I do believe that there are a couple of issues. I think that detection is very, very important. I think coming away from the community standpoint, which we have, we've come away from that. We're an all man for himself community right now, and I think when we consider how community and school and family works together, the detection becomes a little easier, and protection becomes easier as well, because we are taking care of one another. I think that it's the responsibility of all of us. Our children are a responsibility of everyone, and it needs to be easier to report. Victims should not have to be victimized over and over again. It should be an easier process. I do believe, though, because we are a small place and the offender has family members as well and might have children and a mother and the siblings, that we have to also consider that person is a human being, and we might want to consider putting things in place for that individual as well. Just even early work with vulnerable people, with people that are kind of predisposed to that sort of thing. I think we're small enough to get down to business for that type of thing as well. So I think it's quite complicated. Also, I'd like to say about the sex offenders registry, I do believe that is a good idea, but we also need to be very careful who we have managed these things, and we want to make sure that the people that are involved with all of these types of consequential type of practices, that we know who's dealing with it, and they are the professionals, and they know exactly what they're doing.
What is your view on the legal practitioners bill debate?
Okay, so once again, it's one of those things that in theory it seemed like a great idea, and when it was explained from one standpoint, it sounded great, everything sounds good, until you look deeply into it and you look at the different angles. I will always be in support of what promotes Caymanians and Caymanians to work. So if it's going to alienate Caymanians working, meaning Caymanian lawyers, which we have quite a few of them, then I can't support anything like that. So if that means that we have to relook at it, or it has to be revised, or whatever that is, I'm open for that. But I do believe that when we talk about experience, because that was one of the arguments as well, that Caymanian lawyers are not experienced in certain things and they haven't had the exposure, then we need to also try to facilitate that as well. I definitely will stand behind anything that is going to support Caymanians and support how we thrive in our own country. If you're taking work out of Cayman, it's going to then affect us adversely, especially in any particular profession, then I would not support that.
What are your opinions on the LGBT community in Cayman?
I think when we beat the human rights drum so loud, we cannot forget that means everyone is a human being. So for me to feel as if I can support a human rights law and then be against a particular community, then that seems very contradictory. So that's my feelings. I feel if we're all human beings, and if we are going to expect that all of us will have our rights, there are certain things that we put in place to I guess as borders or boundaries. If we want to amend certain laws to look at that, then that's fine. But I do believe that human rights is human rights.